Greetings, Guardians, my name is Bife here. So hopefully you're here after having seen my first big introduction video to the basics of Destiny, which, oh my god, yeah, that one ended up being rather long. Today we're going to be talking about one of the most central topics of Destiny's home turf, humanity, in a lot of different forms. We're going to talk about humanity in the Golden Age, humanity's greatest inventions and discoveries. We're going to talk about humanity after the collapse, when the last city was founded and all the institutions that exist in it now. And we're going to talk specifically about some of the most important inventions in humanity's history, and some of the more important figures in humanity's history. Clovis Bray and Rasputin. Those last two are topics that could have their own individual videos, but today we're covering just the basics, so we're going to go over all of that in only really brief detail. So let's begin. Humanity's story in Destiny really begins in the early 21st century, when humanity detected a massive interstellar object entering the orbit of Mars. After the global powers of the time determined that it was an object from outside the solar system and was probably alien in nature, the world's three greatest powers at the time, the People's Republic of China, Russian Federation, and United States of America, united and pooled their resources so that they could create the Ares 1 project. This ended up sending 3 humans to Mars, one from each of the 3 constituent nations. The Taikonaut, Cosmonaut, and Astronaut inside the Ares 1 craft touched down on Mars approximately 18 months after the arrival of the mysterious alien sphere. And it turned out that that alien sphere, of course, was the Traveler. It was at this moment that they discovered what the Traveler was doing, that it was in fact terraforming Mars, and they were witness to the first time that humanity had ever seen rain on another planet. Mars's entire atmosphere was beginning to get oxygenated, and this was only the first sign of change. The Martian rains beheld by Chow, Hardy, and Mielova were in fact minor miracles compared to what the Traveler would do next. It terraformed worlds like Mercury and Venus into worlds that weren't just habitable, but were verdant paradises that could support human life with ease. It made worlds such as Mars and Io into livable spaces teeming with life. Humanity wasn't left untouched either, as the human race saw its lifespans tripled. The old hatreds of the old world were left behind, and science, reason, spirituality, individuality, and peace blossomed across the system. By all accounts that remain, it was a time of miracles. Humanity expanded out into the stars and began to seek out the opportunities that life in the wider solar system could bring. We began to construct incredible marvels amongst the stars, from one end of the solar system to the other. These are but a few of them. The Ishtar Academy on Venus was an incredible hub of scientific advancement and education, but it also stood near ruins unearthed on Venus that predated humanity by at least 4 million years. These ruins, as it turned out, belonged to the Vex. The Cosmodrome at Baikonur in Kazakhstan saw the great colony ships of the Axis program constructed so that humanity might reach out into the stars. On Mars, the great city of Freehold was built by the Clovis Bray Corporation, and the scientific endeavor of our Golden Age was allowed to flourish without restraint, for better or for worse. The great arcologies of Titan were established, and their floating cities on the methane waves rose to cover the surface of the moon's great oceans. By all accounts, we had become a great civilization, but our greatness did also contain a certain degree of ugliness. It's at this point that I think we need to refer to the Golden Age's equivalent of the Weyland-Yutani Corporation, the Clovis Bray Corporation. Clovis Bray I founded the corporation that would bear his name, and it was from this company that some of the greatest scientific advancements of all mankind's history were spawned. It was also an institution that commonly built that progress on suffering, maintained purely so that the leaders within the corporation could attain their scientific goals. If you discover any records of someone working in a Clovis Bray institution, you're likely to see at least traces of this notion. On the face of it, they wish to be the face of scientific progress and the betterment of humanity, but underneath they really don't care about anything except the personal gain of those at the top. Regardless, the corporation created a great many marvels, all of which can be counted amongst humanity's greatest achievements. Firstly, there was SIVA, a nanotechnology developed by Willa Bray, and various others on the project. Siva was a series of nanites that could be directed by their controller into whatever they willed. From relatively simple objects like a tarp or insulating fabric to an advanced machine with multiple complex components. Great cities are suspected to have risen in miraculously short spans of time thanks to the use of this technology. Then, there is the creation of the Exos. Exos are essentially robotic humans. I explained a little about them in our first episode, and I wanted to save their bigger lore insights for the video where we cover them specifically. For now, just know that they hold a dark secret and that they were made on Europa. Last, but certainly not least, there was Rasputin. Rasputin is known as the War Mind. He's basically a hyper-advanced artificial intelligence distributed across a variety of defense platforms and constructs all across the system. Rasputin was developed in part by Anastasia Bray and a team at the Martian core of the War Mind. Rasputin's control of the system extended through his various subminds, which were other AIs linked to him, distributed throughout other systems inside of Sol. They were all responsible for lesser tasks, but they all effectively were extensions of his own will. In their own parlance, they refer to him as the Tyrant. Rasputin was tasked generally with the defense of the system from both threats known and unknown, and in the process of this, many incredible inventions were created, such as the Icolos weapons and the Sleeper Simulant. A network of attendants known as the Seraphs served the needs of Rasputin that extended beyond his software or the typical capabilities of his robotic frames. Rasputin's warsats and other defensive structures throughout the system were all activated during the collapse, as it attempted to fight off the darkness. Its firepower was not even close to enough to defeat the darkness, and it was squarely driven into hiding. When he was reactivated by Anna Bray later on, he also ended up in the role he had been in before, as the defender of the lost city. When the darkness returned, once again, Rasputin was defeated and was all but destroyed this time. Part of him was saved onto a frame that Anastasia Bray has been working to restore, but she's thus far been unsuccessful. When the collapse occurred, it is believed that the vast majority of humanity died out, with only small percentages of us surviving out in the wilds in distant bunkers or undiscovered strongholds, or in a select few spacecraft that were lucky enough to evade the Black Fleet. The return of humanity in the Dark Age led to the establishment of many small towns in the wild, most of which would not survive. The major settlement that did survive was the one formed beneath the Traveler, which one day would become known as the Last City. At its apex, the city held several rings of walls, with 8 towers worth of Guardian defenders. Now, none of these towers are functional, and the Guardian defenders have taken residence in a portion of the wall beneath the last of these 8 towers. Humanity's current forces within the city can be subdivided into various disciplines and occupations. Here are a few that are worth noting. The FOTC, or Forces of the City, is effectively what seems to be the closest thing the city has to a standing army, but is not made up of Guardian forces. They consist of city volunteers, as best we can tell, and security frames that can provide Guardians with a variety of air support or heavy ordnance as requested, from the typical Hawk gunships that one sees patrolling the area around the city to heavy ordnance including Drake tanks or frames deployed with heavy weapons. Often the FOTC act in a purely defensive role, as Guardians are more than powerful enough to tackle typical combat situations that arise without the assistance of the lightless. It is also seen as an obvious point that if someone is lightless and they are killed in the line of duty, unlike a Guardian, they cannot be brought back to life. Guardians, on the other hand, can throw themselves into combat dying dozens of times and are still able to return thanks to the use of their ghosts. The city also has organizations such as Owl Sector, who are groups of civilians that work to assist the Vanguard in matters of particular crisis. When scientific expertise or additional intelligence capabilities are required, Owl Sector has been activated from time to time in order to respond to certain situations. The city's foundries produce anything a Guardian might need, from weapons to armor to sparrows to ships. There are a variety of well-established and storied foundries in the city that are responsible for the creation of many famous weapons, as well as the typical fare that might be wielded by a Guardian on a daily basis. Some of the best known are Suros, Omolon, Haka, Tex Mechanica, Crux Lomar, Daito, Weist, and the Black Armory. Humanity to this day is in a state of steady population decline, but that's not necessarily the most immediate of problems for the residents of the city, given the imminent danger posed by the various enemies in the solar system at current. Human technology and lifespans might have been improved over time, but it's unclear if humanity will survive to see another century. Most people within the Lost City live in anything from high-rise apartments that can be seen right beneath the traveler, all the way down to slums and squalor. This is all dependent on the way that the Lost City is housing its residents, but most civilians can expect at least a certain degree of quality of life. As best we know, there is nothing that stops a civilian from improving their dwelling, and so as time has gone on, various portions of the city have gotten wealthier, especially as internal commerce has improved. Certain areas of the city were destroyed in the Red War when the Cabal attacked the Lost City, and those areas have not all recovered just yet. Areas such as the Botsa district were completely abandoned in this time, leaving some sections of the city mostly uninhabited. There are a few things that most citizens have in common. There are some dishes and some customs that have survived the collapse and are celebrated commonly. A version of Halloween exists, known as Festival of the Lost. A seasonal holiday that could be found around the winter exists, known as the Dawning. Humanity also celebrates the summer solstice. There are certain dishes such as spicy ramen that have survived the collapse, which are now popular fare in the city. And generally speaking, alcohol is also still about, even if sometimes you might not necessarily find the same things that you did hundreds of years ago. Although this isn't a topic that is commonly cited in Destiny's lore, and I think it's obvious why. There are just more important things going on. Life in the city is hard, but life is harder for any who are outside of it, or any pilgrims who are making their way to the city. Pilgrims are commonly found and escorted in the last few miles of their journeys by the Pilgrim Guard Titan Order, but they have been enacting this particular policy of escorting humanity's survivors to the Lost City for hundreds and hundreds of years. Nowadays, the number of refugees is starting to fall, implying that the Lost City may still at this point be growing, but it's beginning to be the only bastion within which humanity can now live, containing the last remnants of all humanity. This is a worrying state of affairs, and whilst outposts do still exist for humanity across the system, there are none greater than the last safe city. Whether we will be attacked at any point soon and what we will do as a city is an open question that maybe will soon require an answer. But all of that is still to be discovered. In the meantime, though, that's all you're going to get from me for now, and that is the basics behind humanity in Destiny. Hopefully the video was useful, and if you enjoyed it, go ahead and leave a like, and go ahead and hit the bell next to subscribe, and the subscribe button to keep up with all the content on my channel, including this series where I cover the basics of Destiny. If you have any questions or comments, leave them down below in the comments section. If there's something glaringly obvious that I've somehow missed in this, which is not impossible, because hey, maybe I've got my head stuck in the clouds and I forget something really simple, yeah, I'll see about answering it in the comments section down below. In the meantime, though, know that as per usual, your viewership is quite enough for me, and that in the meantime, my name is Byf. Rhodacia ad Astra. I'll see you, Starside.